Hi everyone, it's Mike,
And Raven.
and we're about to paint up some Star Wars Legions characters. We just got into the game, watching lots of Star
Yeah.
Wars recently, so we saw this game, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got a Stormtrooper here, the unit leader to paint up.
Yeah.
I already have one. He's almost done. I gotta do the basing on him, but that's what they're gonna look like, and I gotta put coating on it.
Yep.
So
Looks
that's what
nice.
it looks like. I have one that's fully finished. I tried a pearl coat on it to give it a little bit of shine. And
Nice.
some damage on it too.
Yeah, looks cool.
So I'll show you how to do those. And what's cool about it is they have their own little ID card about them. And then they have little upgrades that come with it too you can give them to. So you can add a Stormtrooper, or I don't think I have the rocket launcher here, so you can add like a rocket launcher too.
Cool.
I'm working on. And I don't have the DLT 19 weapon over here, but it's like a long rifle too.
Neat.
And they have targeting scopes, but they already have precise, so that's probably for the rebels too.
Ah.
Because
Okay,
those
cool.
are all the little upgrades you can get for them too.
Neat.
Just play off that. And what's cool when you buy it too, even with individual ones, we'll show you with Leia, but you get a proof of purchase one too, to prove that it's not like 3D printed or you got it too.
Yeah.
Especially for people that do reselling and stuff or painting.
Which is very
for instance.
cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's those. And then Raven got
I got Princess
Leia.
Leia.
Leia Organa.
Yeah.
It's a cool model too. So even the individual characters are pretty cool. They build up pretty easy. What I like about them too, that came with even all the core set, is everything comes off sprue.
Yeah.
So they're organized in bags, and there's no, you don't have to worry about clipping them out and nicking them by cleaning them. The
Yep.
mold lines are pretty good too. There wasn't any really bad mold lines into them.
Nope.
Instructions are pretty
Which is
easy.
cool. And
then-
it comes, there's some rules on the other side too, right?
Yeah, if there's updated rules.
Yeah, which
And
is
they
cool.
come with, same thing, the proof of purchase, they all gone out too.
Yeah.
All the cars that come with it too.
Tokens.
Upgrades come with each one. So that's what comes with it too.
Cool.
So it's a cool move where you can bombard people too.
Yeah. She has lots of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the names of some of the cards are some of her famous quotes too.
Yeah, the one she busts open the grate too.
Yep.
So
Which is very cool.
that's her stat card.
That's her box, and I've picked out some paint to try to get it. It might not be absolutely identical to the box, but I'm gonna get as close as I can.
Okay.
So
It's all organized, and then I'll start and I'll show you the first color I use to do the Stormtrooper.
okay.
So for the Stormtroopers, because it's white, and white can be a real pain in the ass to paint sometimes,
Yeah.
what I find helps a lot is the contrast white.
Yeah.
It's like a gray color, but even if we'll do it in steps too, and even if you want to stop at a certain step, it can still be tabletop ready, or you can get to the full amount if you want to paint it the full way.
Right.
So I just make sure it's soaking up. It's pretty watery. You can use contrast paints do mess up your brush a bit if they dry, kind of like shades or washes. So I use usually a wash brush.
Yep. And it helps with how it spreads too, right? With the
Yeah.
wash brush.
I wouldn't use like a small fine tip brush or anything.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I'm going to hit black or anything. It's just going to be like your overall washing a model with non-oil or aggregates. Just wash. Obviously, if you don't want to hit the holster, don't hit it. But you don't got don't worry about too much about hitting the base or where black would go,
Yeah.
because contrast is very thin. It's also nice if you're like me, not that great at thinning plates too much sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
Me
a
too.
very thin coat. So you don't have to worry about too much about loading your brush with it. The pauldron I'm going to make gold. Some people make it orange, but I want it to be a little more shiny, so I'm going to put gold on there. So I'm going to try not to hit the pauldron.
Cool.
And if it pools too much, you can just spread it around.
Yeah.
I won't hit the gun either, because the gun's going to be black too.
Right.
Anyway, just mostly in the recesses you want too, so it gives it a little bit of definition.
Yeah.
Up under it. And there we go.
Cool.
So that's just with the contrast, and it will dry into like a light gray.
Yeah.
And then the next step is pretty easy too, so I'll show you that. Those are the other paints later. So for the base, I put sand. I'm going to put sand on mine, even though Darth Vader hates sand, but I'm going to put sand on the bottom of mine.
Yeah.
So just to cover the white on the base, just in case some of the sand falls off or you miss a spot, I'll use another contrast paint on the base too. So this is Organa's Dunes.
Okay.
This is just to cover the white. So on the base, don't have to be perfect with it.
Yeah, it's just kind of a, if something comes off, oh, there's not necessarily a white face under there. Because sometimes it happens.
And that's it. So I'll let that dry. And we'll do the next one. So Raven's going to do her first color.
Okay. So I'm going to start doing Leia. And like I said, I'm going to try to get it as close to the box as I can. So I'm going to do the pants and the little vesty shirt that she has on.
I looked at other people's painting videos. There's some really good ones for the Stormtroopers up too.
Yeah.
Same with that's how I learned how to do some of the weathering effects. I haven't looked up on how to paint her yet, so we're kind of trying. Did you look at any yet, or?
No, not yet. I saw some pictures, but I hadn't looked at any videos yet.
Okay, so what's the first color you're going to use?
I'm going to use model color Vallejo Azure, number 62.
Okay.
If anybody's curious, for the pants and the little vesty part. And I just put a little in my palette and start putting it on.
You're doing the pants and the shirt that color too?
Yes, I am. So I'm going to put that on, and then I will come back and show you what it looks like.
And that's going to be on the shirt too, that same color, right?
The vesty shirt, and then she has another shirt underneath that's like a sandy color that I have a color picked out for.
Cool.
And then some black.
So show what that looks like when it's done?
Yeah.
So now you're doing the blue part of the shirt too?
Yep.
Nice.
They've done a decent job with the details on these models too, I think.
Yeah, and the prices are pretty good too, I think, for like hero model. I think that was like $19 CAD or something.
Yeah. Very cool.
So it's still not dry completely, but the pauldron's pretty dry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the pauldron next. So that's going to be like the gold on this guy, right? The bronze color.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use model color bronze, 175.
Cool.
So let's set that up. And he's going to be the only one that has this color out of the whole units that came in the box.
Right.
Well, that and the other leader. There's basically two sculpts of each Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
So I'll just put that on. You can thin down the metallic paints, but I find they separate sometimes if you put two. The Vallejo is pretty good for not being too thick.
Yeah.
So I didn't add water to this. I don't load my brush too heavy, but it goes on pretty good. Even if you go back, if it's a little thin, you can do another coat. But just with one coat, I think it looks okay right now. Because I'm going to go back over this with non-oil after.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a touch-up step or anything anyway. You don't got to be too perfect. You don't try to paint the whole model in it, but if you make a little mistake, it's okay.
Yeah.
So that's the pauldron.
Awesome.
And the next step that I'll do is, I noticed it when I looked at the card, I didn't even notice that there's little vents in their helmets.
Yeah.
And they're blue inside of them.
Right.
So this is one of my favorite metallic colors I've been using recently. It's gunmetal blue, 180 from Model Color.
Cool.
It's really good for a bunch of stuff. Blue metal, or if you want like a frost weapon and stuff for like D&D stuff and everything.
Yeah.
It works pretty good. So because it's smaller, I'll take my smaller brush. And it's just in the vents. There. Like so.
Yep.
And then there's two vents here too. You could always touch them up if they're a little wide or not too. But that's just for the vents.
Awesome.
Because that's when they're highlighted up a bit in there.
Yep. Cool.
So those are the vents. And I'll do the black last. So the next one is the silver. So also on their helmets, there's little points where there would be silver too.
Yep.
So I'm using oily steel. It's 177 model color.
Awesome.
The other colors between the white of these, they can paint up pretty fast. It's just the white takes a bit. So
Right.
so just these little vents on their helmets there. There's one there. And there's one in there. That I put in steel.
Right.
And then on the front of the mask by their would-be mouth, I put steel in there too.
Cool.
Also, if you want them to have like a scope or lens on their gun, so there's scopes there, I would put the oil also on the scope on their gun too.
Cool.
I don't know if you can see that. So that's where it would go to. Because on the other one, that's a scope too, was the same when you highlight it up too.
Right. Yeah. I can see it.
That's that. And also while you're waiting, if there's some of the pooling from the contrast, if you want to clean it up a bit, if it pools too much, you can always take your brush with some water, or if it's dry, just go back and take all the stuff on here. You don't want to do it if it pools that much. You don't want to take it off because you'll leave. I'll even show that it will leave a streak in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna paint over that, but you gotta, if you're gonna touch it up, you gotta touch up the whole thing, or it will leave marks, right?
Yeah.
So next steps, and then the last one before you'd have to go to highlights is the black. Now, I'm gonna use the contrast black because I'm sure you could actually paint this up. It's mostly contrast paints, and it could be tabletop ready if you don't want to do any highlights.
Right.
Or you could just go into the actual black. But I'm going to do the contrast first.
Okay.
So I use Black Templar.
Okay.
I like using the contrast paints too because it's kind of like a test that you can show where your color is going to hit and what it's going to look like without putting thick paint on or easy something to paint over easily.
Yeah.
So contrast paints I find are good for that too if you want to see what it might look like with that color.
Cool.
So the gun's going to be all black too. And because they're so watery, they're easy to apply.
Mm-hmm.
Can go into the recess pretty easily too. So the gun's all black. Again, don't got to worry about too much about hitting the other paints because you're going to touch it up.
Yep.
If this is going to be your final step though as a contrast, you might be a lot more neat, but I'm going to go back and highlight it.
Right.
So I don't have it perfect. Same with the eyes. I'm going to put the contrast in the eyes too. The helmet line has black too. Top of their helmet, little vents has black.
Cool.
There. In between their vents where you put the silver before too, you can put little dabs too in between it. You can always go backwards with contrast too.
Nice.
The front of their helmet, not where you put the silver, has black too.
Cool.
And then the pieces in between their metal, where their armor is, has black also.
Cool.
Here it would show, so on the arms there. Here would have black. Anywhere where you want, if there's recesses, if you want to add more darkness, you can take that. Instead of using shade, you can use this contrast too.
Yep.
I've seen some people, they would take the contrast and run around the sides too if they don't want to do that, because painting over top of white with shade can be hard too.
Yeah.
So you could just use the contrast to do it too. So they would take the contrast and just run around the sides
Ah, okay.
like that. But I'm gonna do shading afterwards. So there's a little bit here too. Do the legs. here too. Basically, any space in between the armor for the Stormtrooper has black in it.
Right.
Some of the other ones, it's in a little bit of a different space because the armor, there's a little bit of unexposed parts like there too.
Right.
But that's basically all the spaces you would put it. Oh, some people, there's little vents here you can put contrast in between too.
Cool.
So I'll touch that up maybe a little bit, and then I'll be ready to put wash over it.
Yeah.
And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done.
Cool. Yep.
And what two color? You have two colors there. So which one you're gonna do?
Yes, I do. So next, I'm going to do she has a sort of like a tan color shirt
Okay.
underneath the vest, which I'm going to do with medium gray, number 111 from Vallejo Model Color. And then for her blaster and her belt and her boots, I'm going to do black. I don't know what number black is.
Yeah, it's probably rubbed off because we use it a lot, but it's Vallejo black.
Vallejo black.
We use that or Abaddon black too. I find Abaddon's a little shinier.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that. So depends on what it is with the Abaddon. So yeah, I'm gonna start with the tan color. Put it on her sleeves here. Some people might be confused too because it says medium gray on the bottle and it's not particularly gray.
Yeah, that's why when I get new colors, I think that's one of the newer ones, I take a dab of it and put it on top of the lid so then I can see what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Not just that and you can see
And it
what
also
looks
tells
like
if
when
I've
it
used
dries.
that paint or not. If I see there's none on there, I know that if I want to try out a new paint I haven't used yet.
Yeah. And sometimes it's good to see what it looks like when it dries because sometimes it dries different
Yeah.
than when it's right out of the bottle. Make sure you get under the arms and stuff too. That's another one some people miss sometimes. Now, because this is the base coat, I'm not being too perfect. We're not going to be super messy or anything, but it's okay if you hit some spots. Water, color. So I just finished up with the medium gray color, so now I'm going to move on to the black.
Cool.
I'm going to do...
And you're not using the contrast like I did, you're just using the axle.
I'm just
starting
using...
at black, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because her blaster and everything is black.
See the cool, I saw the rule for her, she has sharpshooter too, so she can negate cover too. Which is kind of cool.
Very cool, yeah.
We haven't used her yet. We played that demo game that's in there too.
Yeah, it was good fun. It was really cool to see. The guys with the lightsabers are pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, when I'm using Vader's crew and you had the Imperials.
Yeah.
You had the Rebels.
Yeah.
Vader ran up at the ATRT.
Yeah.
And just destroyed it with a lightsaber.
Yeah, and even Luke did a lot of damage with his lightsaber too, right? There's a lot of cool things you can do.
Yeah, you diced up my speeder bikes with the lightsaber.
Yep. Which is very cool.
And when you get the upgrades, you can actually throw the lightsabers too and do a bunch of cool stuff.
That's very cool.
Deflect, you can actually deflect bullets too as of abilities too.
Yeah, which is neat. It's cool that they tried to incorporate as many of the abilities and stuff as they could. So, just working on the boots now. And then I'm going to do her belt.
And when you're done, you'll show what it looks like?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm still waiting for my contrast to dry a bit because I had to actually paint the holster on the Stormtrooper. I'll show you when we get to my one.
Yep.
I had to do the contrast on that. But Raven's going to do more of Leia now.
Yep. So I'm going to do her skin now with Natural Flesh, another Vallejo, but it's from the Nocturna line.
the skin colors for those. It's like a bunch of different skin tones. It was pretty good.
Yeah. And then I'm going to also do her hair in leather brown, which
Cool.
is number 147.
I think that's a new brown we got too.
Yeah. So start with the skin color. Like I said, you don't have to be too perfect, but just make sure you get everywhere. The other thing I really liked about these Star Wars models is that they're not super cartoony too. Like you look at that and she kind of looks like Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia, which is nice.
I forget if that, because we're fairly new to the game too. I think there's other poses and other models too, because I think there's multiple different versions of Vader and Luke too.
Which is cool.
I know I was looking at two that I might get next to is Sabine.
Yeah,
You can get her with her helmet on or off too.
Which is very cool.
And my favorite, Darth Maul too, is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also really like from Rogue One, Jyn Erso is cool.
I saw that you can get the other ones in that movie. My Star Wars knowledge sucks. I should catch up on the pilot. I think you know it more than
I think they're actually making a show about him. I think it's some Andor.
Yeah, I saw that. But him and the robot that's in black armor. You can get that as a set too.
Cool. Yes, I totally am spacing on what the name of that robot is at the moment. But yeah.
The sarcastic one, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What I didn't notice, I don't think the guy that Danny Yen played, I didn't see there as a model for him. I didn't see.
Right. Which would be cool. So we get her face and her ear. So her ear gets a little bit lost in the hairdo there. Now would not be the time that I'd try to do the eyebrows. I'll be doing eyebrows when I do the eyes later.
Okay.
Because that's when I'll have my teeny tiny brush.
I know this for pre-orders now too. The people that are fans of Mandalorian, they're gonna have.
Yeah, they're gonna have Grogu.
Grogu and the Mandalorian too as a model for the game.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see who they come out with because there's now that they've have all these shows like Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian and all these other cool side characters. I'm hoping that there'll be some cool stuff coming out. So there's her skin. I'm gonna just do some of that leather brown on her hair now. And when it's all come together, I will come back and show you what it looks like.
Cool. So that was a holster I was talking about earlier. I had to do some contrast on that too.
Yeah.
Because most of the stuff is just white and black.
Yep.
And the leader has a gold pauldron, right?
Yeah.
So if you just wanted to do contrast paint and a little bit extra with the blue and the gold, that could be tabletop ready if you didn't want to do any more highlights or anything.
Yeah.
It goes up pretty fast. So that's,
yeah.
Right? But I'm going to add, you don't have to do this step, but I find sometimes with contrast, it separates a bit or it's easy to rub off and it doesn't show that much definition sometimes.
Right.
So I go over it, even though there's a bit of wash in the contrast, I go over it with an actual wash. So I'm going to do non-oil over the whole model.
Okay.
So I'm going to take my non-oil.
And another model we were hoping for, we were just talking about a minute ago, I'm hoping for some Ewoks.
Yeah, I didn't see any Ewoks. I saw 3D printed ones, but none from the game yet.
I have to say.
So, just like I did at the start, just everything's going to get non-oil on it.
Yeah.
Even the bronze pauldron over top of everything. Not too thick, but you don't have to thin it out or...
No, enough so you know it's there.
Yeah. Don't put big, huge dabs of it like that on it. You have to spread it out a bit, but
yeah,
you don't have to be too worried about it. Just give it a nice bath with the non-oil. If you wanted to give a little different type of definition with the bronze, you could have put There's other washes like Recklin Fresh Shade or Serpent Sepia.
Yep.
It gives a little more of the yellow on that part. And if you don't have the blue metal, the gunmetal that I had at the vents, there's some blue contrast. You could have put contrast in there too if you don't want to do that.
Right.
So you could do that, basically the whole model in contrast paint if you want to.
Yeah.
I forget what the yellow contrast paint is you could have used, or there's an orange one too if you don't want to use other paints besides contrast.
Yep.
So.
And the red contrast paint's really nice. If
Yeah,
you
the
wanted
Flesh
to do-
Terror red or something. I use that a lot for, especially lots of the undead stuff I've been doing a lot recently.
Yeah, if you wanted to do the pauldron in red. It's a nice.
And then corn red goes good off of that one too and stuff. I'm sure we'll have a video with that showing it.
Yep.
Because there's those, I think they're Palpatine's guards too, the royal guards that's in the red
I don't
robes.
know if they're the ones called Cardinal or if there's red Stormtroopers
We're
that
going to
are
be playing
called
again. We're going to have to
Cardinal.
fresh up on our Star Wars
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah, so don't mind us. Our Star Wars knowledge isn't super great. We're learning.
We know these are Stormtroopers. We know the basic stuff. But,
Yep, we're learning.
and I'm learning. I did realize that when I started doing, there's different colors for their masks that are pretty cool, like the red ones and the blue ones. And then
Yep. And, well, I'm also a fan of Captain Phasma, who is the total chrome Stormtrooper.
yeah, some people might not like the character, but she looked cool. I
Yep.
like she looked cool. Okay, so
That's
that's just
awesome.
what's in non-oil. That's going to take a bit to dry. So even if you just do that as a step once it's dry, it just adds a little bit more definition on top of the contrast too, right?
Yep.
So when it dries, then I'll get into doing highlights for it.
Yep.
So I'll let that sit. Probably takes 20 minutes to half an hour, give or take,
Yep.
to fully let it dry. So when it's done, I'll see what it looks like.
Okay.
So now you're going to put on the...
Washes.
Yeah, you're done the base, so you're going to do washes now, right?
Yes.
You could even make that tabletop if you wanted, if you didn't want to add...
Yeah, if you didn't want to add too much details and you just wanted to do color,
Yeah.
she's okay to go. But I'm gonna do some washes and stuff. So I'm gonna do Raiklin first.
Yeah.
Raiklin Flesh Shade on her skin,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna do Null Oil as an overall on the rest of her, and then I think I'm gonna do like you did, and I'm gonna put some Cygor Brown contrast paint on the base.
Yeah, because I think we're going to do like more of a fourth theme or grass and rocks and stuff for the rebels.
Yes, I think so. So we'll give Raiklin a little bit of a shake.
The other core box, I think that'd be cool too, is the Separatist, and I forget what the hell the other ones. It's Clone Wars, right? So there's Obi-Wan and Grievous.
Yeah.
So lots
That'd
of
be
droids
cool.
and
Something to
Clones
keep in
too?
mind too with your washes, which is something Mike just pointed out to me, that you should start with the lighter wash if you're doing multiple washes, so that way, if for some reason you don't clean your brush
yeah, if
good
you do a
enough
shitty job cleaning your
and it mixes
contrast
together,
or anything.
you're
Yeah.
not gonna have super dark skin. So with Raiklin, we just put it on the flesh, and then it helps with defining in between the fingers and stuff, and
Especially in faces, recesses, if you have trouble getting like cheeks and eyebrows and chins and stuff, the shade does a good job
Yep.
bringing them up, so it's easier to hit for highlights and stuff.
yeah, and then sometimes depending on the model, it helps with the eyebrows and the tone of the lips too.
Yep, sometimes you, for makeup or blush and stuff, you can use the washes and stuff too, right?
Yep. And if they're blonde and fair enough skinned, sometimes the Raiklin does it all for you. So try to get a little in her neck. It's okay if I hit her hair and stuff a little bit.
Yeah, for lighter skin hair colors, I even like blondes and stuff. I use the Recklin in the hair to highlight it
Me too.
instead of the non-oil, because bringing blonde yellow back up from non-oil can be a pain sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes it looks like Mr. Noodles if you're not careful. So there's the Raiklin. I'm going to shake up the null oil a little bit, not too much. Too heavy. Start at the bottom.
You're just going to do the rest overall wash with the non-oil.
Yeah. Work your way up. I always start at the bottom and work my way up, because that way if I have too much wash on the brush, it ends up on the shoes.
And if you want it to be like a more dirty look, like she's been through some crap, you can use agrass too.
Yep.
Make it look more dirty.
And even if you wanted her clothes to look a little bit more worn, you could use
Camo shade?
yeah.
Yeah, we use that a lot for the zombies and stuff, right? Makes it.
I think it gives it a bit of a greenish tinge to stuff, which is cool. Yeah, I use that a lot for the zombies. Collar. Don't forget the blaster.
Yep, even if stuff is painted black, I still use Dawn oil over top of it, just to fill in recesses if I missed a spot. It still gives it a little bit of definition, I find, too.
Yep. And people might think it's not noticeable on black. Sometimes it's noticeable on black.
Yep, especially when you're zooming in close or taking pictures with light and stuff, you notice it sometimes.
Yep. Go. So, there she is with the washes. Close up. And then we're going to do Cygor Brown on the base.
Okay.
So give it a quick shake. And just like the wash, put it a little bit on the wash brush.
And sometimes the lids are a pain.
I pat it a tiny bit off on the side just because I don't want to goop too much. Just brush it on the base.
I've tried that before too. I've too because it's on my one, but the contrast is good for the base if you want to put stuff over top. But the rim, the contrast, I've tried it before on the rim, and it kind of rubs off really easily. So I don't know, unless someone else, if you coat it in it a couple times. But I find contrast on the rim doesn't do too great because it rubs off even if you put a sealer on it.
Okay. So try not to hit the rim. Yeah, because we paint our rims a solid color, right?
Yeah.
I think some people might continue the basing all the way down the rims.
Sometimes I
what
do.
They're doing. Yeah. So
That's everything to us.
that's Leia right now with the wash. So we're gonna let that dry, and then we'll come back and do some highlights. I think I'm gonna do some color mixing, so it'll be fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start doing highlights now
Okay.
on the Stormtrooper because now it's dry with some non-oil on there. So if you wanted that to just go on the table, it's good too.
Yep.
It's a little dark though, but I'm gonna use some white to bring it up. So I start with silver gray. So I'll go up to white. So I start at that color.
Yep. Number 152.
Yep. So I'll go layer new all the raised parts. Now I'm gonna be a little more careful when I'm painting because you don't want to go into any other colors or nicks.
Yep.
Any ones. Usually start with some raised parts first. And because it's white, you'd want it to be watered down a bit because it looks thick if you don't water it down.
Yep.
So anywhere that's raised up, I'll take this silver gray and go over it.
Yep.
And eventually, without layers, it's going to go to that, right?
Right.
So I'm going to do the silver gray first, and then I'll come back and show you it to when we do the next step.
Okay. So for my next step, I'm going to do some layers, and what I usually do is I go over top with the color that I just did over top of the wash just to help bring it up more and add some dimension. So I'm going to go over top of the Azure, number 62, the medium gray, and the black again, just to give it some more dimension. So I'll start with the Azure.
And you're just going over the raised parts, right?
Yes.
Leaving the shade in the depths of it so you can bring up the highlight on it.
Yep. So there's a little bit on the leg.
And then you're gonna go back over the gray too?
Yep.
And the black?
Yep.
And then we'll see what it looks like when you come back?
Yeah.
So I'm still doing some of the white on it.
Yep. Looks good.
Sometimes, because I'm doing thin coats, it won't go on as much, like on the leg there. Don't try to fight with it and keep putting layers on it because it'll get too thick. That's the problem with white.
Right.
So just let it dry and keep doing more coats. Because
Yeah.
if you keep trying to go back over it and over it with the white, it's going to get too thick.
It'll look chalky, right?
Yeah, so I'll leave it like that, and when it dries, I'll go back over with the white again, like that one's almost dry on the leg. And see, now it's just, instead of trying to fight with it while you're painting, it will bring it back up to the color you want, right?
Yeah.
Same with that one's still a little wet, so I'm going to leave that one because I don't want to spread the paint and make it look thick.
Right.
So I still got to go back and do more of the white because there's so much of it.
Yep.
And then we're going to show what Raven's going to do next.
Okay.
Okay, so you went back over the medium gray and the blue and the
Yep.
black
I went back
too.
over everything on the outfit and the blaster.
And now what's your next step?
Now I'm gonna do the same thing with the skin color,
Okay.
and which is natural flesh, and her hair color.
So you're just going to bring them back up, right?
Yes, I'm just gonna bring them back up, and then I'm gonna start mixing colors together actually to do some of the highlights.
But you're just going to do
Yeah.
those parts first, right?
Yeah. I'm just gonna bring those back up. Don't need a lot because it's not a lot of space. So,
Are you going to water them down a bit too? Because it's...
yeah, I watered the flesh down a little bit on that first layer because you don't want it to get too thick and goopy. So we do a little bit on the flesh, especially on the fingers where the fingers would bend and move and the skin might get a little bit lighter on the arms. And then I would do, she has this cool hairstyle where you can see that there's lines from the braids and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you just take a tiny bit and put it along some of the lines where the braids are, just to give it some more emphasis.
Okay, and when you're done those, we'll show what it looks like after?
Yeah.
So I got all the silver gray done now on the Stormtrooper.
Yeah, looks good.
So now I'm going to do some highlights on the edges of them to give it more definition. So on the edges, I'm going to do it number 5 for Model Color Ivory.
Yep.
And I'm just going to go along the very edges of the armor for the highlights. So all on the edges. So even like on the breastplate here, I'll just go on the edges of it. Trying to be careful not to go too thick. Places like the belt too, where it's raised. Just along the edges.
Yep.
To give everything more definition. Even on places like on the legs here, the very edges where light would hit.
Yep.
Tips of fingernails is another one. Not fingernails, well, this is the armor, right?
Yep.
There.
Tips of the gloves.
This is here. So I'm going to go and highlight on the edges where the light would hit, really. And when I'm done, I'll show you what it looks like.
So I went over the outfit again with the same color that I had before I washed it, and now I'm going to do some highlights. So the first highlight that I have that I'm going to do, I mixed the azure with silver gray a tiny bit, just because I wanted to make it just a touch lighter. And then I have deck tan number 110 from Vallejo, which will be the highlight up from the medium gray. So do a little bit of that, mostly just put it where the light hits it.
So you did like 50-50 or so for the mixing?
Yes. Just so it's just a tiny bit lighter, not a lot lighter. And she has some lines in her pants already anyway, so just do a little bit where the light hits. There. And do the same with the deck tan. She has some pockets that I noticed on the shirt, so I'll try to do a little bit along the lines of the pockets too, so you can see them more. Little pouches, actually. And when I'm done doing that, I'll come back and show you how it looks.
So I went along the edges with the ivory.
Yeah, looks nice.
And all the edges are highlighted up now.
Yep, looks good.
Now for the final highlight, if you want to add a little bit just where the light would hit too, I use scale color white.
Cool.
Scale 75. And this is just basically on the edges of where you highlighted with the ivory. Just a little bit, so maybe like here on the breastplate. Brightens up, gives it even more a little bit definition. Very tips of corners of places, like here on the kneecap there. There. Corners of the knees. By the eyes too, maybe, would be another place to put it.
Yep.
Basically just highlighting the highlight you did earlier, right?
Yeah.
There. On the back. Like, especially corners too, so that corner right there, I would take white and hit it down. Depending where the light would hit too, if you're doing source lighting. So at the very corner here, light would hit there. Corners of stuff. Wherever you think light would hit it or it would be brighter. Wouldn't be under here because it's under his arm, so you wouldn't, there's shadow there, so you wouldn't put a bright highlight there.
Right.
But like on the tops of his arms, the light's going to be hitting down depending where it hits on there, right? So
yeah.
And whenever that's done, I'll show you when that's happening. And we only have a couple more things to do after that, really. The white's the hardest part, so when the white's done, I just got to do a couple more steps and he'll be done.
Awesome. So we finished the highlights on the outfit with the mix of azure and a little bit of silver gray, and the deck tan on this beigey kind of sandy color. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the highlights on her skin and her hair. So for her skin, I'm going to use a 50-50 mix of the natural flesh, which was the base color that was on there, and Fairy Flesh by Nocturna. I find Fairy Flesh on its own is a little bit bright at first, so it's good to mix them together, and then if you still wanted a little bit more pale, to do Fairy Flesh after that. And then for her hair highlight, I'm going to use Hull Red, which is number 146, sorry. And it's a nice sort of dark reddish brown color that I think looks good to highlight dark brown hair. So that's what we're going to do next. Start with the Hull Red and go back a little bit on where the braids and everything are. And you can see, let's give the dark brown a little bit of dimension, so it's a little bit more of a, I don't know if you'd call it a chestnut brown color. And then with the 50-50 mix of the Fairy Flesh, this one you can go on the raised bits, like on the knuckles, on the fingers, just so they stand out a little bit more. And I'm going to finish that up, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like.
So now that we're done the white and all the highlights on it,
Yeah, looks good.
If you want to put more, you can too. I just thought wherever the light would hit a bit. And I'm going to make them damaged a little bit later, so I don't want to go too crazy with them.
Yeah.
There. So now I'm going to go over the pauldron. So I'm going to go back over the bronze, which is the same color bronze.
Yep.
First, just to bring it up a bit. So just go back over it. Be careful not to hit any of the white after your work of doing all that white.
Yeah.
So I just brought back the color again.
Yeah.
It's the same. Now I'm going to do the highlights on it. So the bronze is done. I always keep them in order too, so I know my steps. The first was white, then the basing gold.
Yeah.
Keeps them organized when I'm doing, especially when I batch paint a lot of stuff. So when you're batch painting, it really helps.
Yep.
You have to paint like 50 of these damn things.
Yeah, and then if you have to stop at some point and start again, you can always.
Yeah. I used to
always
write
know
them
what you're
down too,
doing.
especially if you're jumping from project to project.
Yeah.
Putting them in a binder or writing down what colors you use.
Yep.
So now this one, the highlight after bronze, is old gold. They're pretty close in color, but it just gives it a little bit more of a shine to it.
Right.
So number 173 for model color. And now I'm just going to go on the edges of the pauldron with the old gold.
Yeah. Almost looks like it's buffed it up a little bit.
Yep. It's also good for when we do damage. Let's say you want to make it where a blaster would hit. I would just put a nick in it. Like that. It doesn't show as much when I do other damage it would, but we're at the start of a nick basically, right?
Yeah.
So that was the edges. Then another highlight off of that is brass, 174.
Yeah.
Just bringing up the gold to be more shiny in certain spots.
Yep.
So again, highlighting a highlight basically. There's a highlight there, so it's a little bit shinier there now.
Yep.
Over here. Wherever you want it to be more brighter. And like I said before, it's a nick. I think I'm going to put a nick here, so I'll do a start of the nick maybe right there. You can't see it as much. Let's see if I can get more of the bronze on there. Right there, right? That's the start of the nick. It's also good for hiding. If, let's say, I forgot to clean up a mold line, maybe, covering it with a highlight to make it look like a nick, maybe.
Yeah.
Works too.
Not a bad idea.
So that's the start of the nick there. And the very final highlight off that is gold, 172. So that's just the tips of where sync light would reflect off of. So here was a highlight there. It's the very tips, edges of stuff. Here, and then I would put that, if your brush is small enough, inside where I put the other chip at the start. Like so. And then drag it down maybe a little bit more to where the damage would be.
Cool.
So that's the pauldron. The next step was the vents inside the mask. So these are all small steps, so I'll do them all now. Same color, the gunmetal blue.
Yep.
Take the gun blue, go back into the vents. Just be careful not to hit the white. There. There we go. And then to do a final highlight off of that, if you want it to shine a little bit more, I use scale 75 cobalt alchemy.
Nice.
It's really good for potion bottles and other stuff too. This, if you want.
Yeah, we use a
Same
few of
as
those.
ice too. I use it for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the few of the alchemy colors from scale 75 we use for potion bottles and.
So I would just put that inside if your brush is small enough. Hopefully my hands don't shake too much. Just inside of it.
Yeah.
To give it like there's more reflection in there.
Right.
There. And that's that. If you really want it, I don't know if I'll do it with this one because it's tiny, and you could actually take white alchemy, which is like a white metal color,
Yeah.
and you can put it as a reflection there too. But because there's so much white already on the model, I don't think I'll do it because I think it might clash a bit.
Okay.
If it was black armor, I would probably put that on there just to give it a little highlight.
Yeah.
And then the last one is going back over where I put the metal, the oily steel.
Yep.
So I use that in the little holes of their vents, their mask, right?
Right.
So I'll go back over. That was oily steel.
Yep.
In there. Just be careful. And then I also did it on the lens of the gun.
Right.
There. If you wanted to add more details on the gun, if you wanted to make maybe the tip of it, however you want to paint the gun up, right?
Right.
Then to highlight the oily steel is silver model color.
Awesome.
So I'll take that. This color would probably be really good for Captain Phasma you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's a little thin, so you might have to start like I did with oily steel, but it's a nice shiny silver color. Just put a dab of it.
It would work with the bright and chromy, right? If you started with the darker.
Yeah, and then at the very edges of the lens, if you want where the light would reflect on it, I'd go along the edge of it, like so.
Okay.
And that's the metal. Now, same like I did with the blue, another highlight off the silver, especially if you're doing tips of things in metal or other stuff, I would take the white alchemy too and put it on the very tips of the silver.
Okay.
Same with the lens. If you want just where the light would hit on the reflection, like on mirrors or lens, I would put a very dab of a tip on there.
Right.
But again, because we're using white as the armor, it might clash a bit or you won't see it. So I don't think I'm going to put it on it this time, but if you want to try it, that's what I would do too.
Okay.
And then the last one, that one's going to take a bit, so the next would be the black. So I'll do that next.
Okay.
But I'll show you those, and then we're going to show what Raven's going to do next, and then I'm going to do the black.
Okay. Okay. So I finished doing the highlight in the hair and the 50-50 mix of fairy flesh and natural flesh on the skin. The hull red was the hair. So I still have a little bit of hull red left on my palette, and I'm going to be using a smaller brush to do her eyebrows.
Okay.
There's one. There's two. Gotta go back and fix that after. Need to put on the lips. I'm gonna go back in with the flesh color and fix the little ding I made in the eyebrow. And I put on the lipstick.
Okay.
And then when I'm gonna do the eyes in a little bit when we come back.
So I'm about to do the black now on the model.
Yep.
I'll go back and go over thing with the model color black.
Yep.
That's just to clean stuff up. So like in the eyes, the black that's around the helmet, and then the vents.
Looks good.
Like the gun, go off all the raised parts on the gun too. I'm gonna brighten up where the contrast was and the non-oil you went over with, right?
Right.
So, and then I'm gonna go through all the black to do that, but then I'll show you the next highlight is model color dark gray. I find
Yep.
it's good to highlight black because sometimes highlighting black can be a pain sometimes.
It can.
So it's number 166, dark gray. So I'll go back and do the edges of where the black was on the helmet here. I won't go in the eye sockets there, and then, like, especially the race parts on the blaster too. The edges, like the edge of the holster too. That's what's a dark gray. And then the final highlight that I would do off the dark gray would be dark sea blue.
Yep.
You instinct to use blue for highlight, but on a highlight on black, it works good too.
Yep.
So it's number 48 for model color.
Yeah, it's a nice color.
And just where the edges would hit with light. So let's do it on here. It's very subtle, but gives it a little bit. Same as on the edges of where the blaster is. I put the dark sea blue on the edges.
Yeah, so it's just not a solid black
Yep.
mass.
Gives it some definition. Same as on the edges.
On the blaster.
And then just in the corners of it. So, and then once all the black's done, it'd be ready to get based and doing, if you want to do the battle damage on it, if you want to put nicks in the armor, so you can use a stipple brush or do it yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do all the black on the armor, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like.
Okay.
So you ready to do the eyes now?
Yep. I also have a little bit of the flesh highlight on my palette just in case I make a mistake. So the way that we do the eyes normally is we do a little bit of black first, and then we put the white so it looks like it has a little bit of eyeliner around it. So I'm going to do a little bit of black first. Black. We did a little bit of black first. And then we'll go in with the white.
What color white did you use?
I used the scale 75 white, and for the black I'm using Abaddon black.
So you're doing the white in the eyes now?
Yep. So just a quick dab. And then just give it a sec before you go back in to do a dot of the black. Black, and then because I made a little bit of a mistake, I'm going to take some of the flesh color and clean up the little bit that I got on the nose. Same on the other side. So it turns it into a bit of a highlight, and then there we go for the eyes. I'm also going to do a little bit of a highlight on the edges of the black with Corvus black from Citadel, which is, it's kind of a grayish black. It's lighter than your standard Abaddon. And I'm going to go along the edges of some of the black that I did with the Abaddon black as a highlight. And when I'm done, I will show you what it looks like. So I finished doing the Corvus, the highlights on the black. It's very subtle, but we did the Corvus, and now we're going to work on the basing. So what we do is we use, you can use pretty well any school glue, white glue, and we use it to put on different tufts and rocks and such. Right now I have a mix of these three. So there's some darker grass in this one, and some sort of grayish brown stones in that one and some green grass from this one. And we mix it all together in various Tupperware containers.
And it's from Battlefields?
Yeah.
Stones?
Some of them are, one of them is Battlefields, and well, they're all from Army Painter, actually. They're called Battlefield Battleground. A dab or two on the base, and then I use a brush to smear it around so it's even. Use a brush to spread glue around. Even if you need to put another dab or two, it's better than just glumping on too much glue, and then that way you can spread it out evenly. Make sure you get under the feet and stuff. So I'll put another dab over here. Spread it out. That way you should be able to get an even layer of grass or dirt or whichever you choose to base your model in. And then we have this little dish that we put smaller models in. If you have a bigger base, of course you got to get a bigger dish. And then I just take a pinch from in there and I sprinkle it on. Rotate the model a little bit, making sure that you get in and around and under places. The point of the dish is that we can tap off the excess. Go. And then I tilt slightly to tap off the excess. And then you can see if you are a little light in some spots, I can still see some glue through here, so I add a little more. Sometimes I press it down a little bit to make sure it'll stick better. Tap off the excess. And then there you go. So we're gonna let that dry a bit, and then we'll put some paint on the rim and come back and show that after it's dried.
So we're gonna get ready to do the damage effects on the Stormtrooper now.
Yep.
So there's two ways you can do it if you want to make it look like the arm is damaged. You can stipple it on with a sponge. So I got some warp lock bronze here. Some people use Rhinox hide or a dark brown.
Yep.
I'm going to do warp lock bronze so it looks like I dinged the metal and there's a little bit of metal underneath.
Yeah.
So I'm going to dab it on the... This one's a little bit more messy, but if you want a few little dings on it, it's kind of like dry brushing. Make sure it's dry.
Yep.
And do it around the feet a bit. So, and then you can see how it leaves a little bit of damage. I could have got a bigger brush, but see, looks like I got damaged a bit on the foot.
Yep.
Down there has a little bit of damage on it too.
Yep.
Another way you can do it that you have more control over, but I think I prefer doing this a little bit more. Around the feet, stippling is okay. Let's say you want to make it look, well, we had there in the pauldron before, right?
Yep.
So I'll take a little bit of the warp lock and make it look like I got dinged there. And the start of it, maybe it hit the pauldron there and ricocheted and went off that way.
Yep.
So we'll just put it, just a thin line maybe there. And usually you go from the edges out. So let's say you got hit in the breastplate. So you would start and you would go down to the edge or up. So we'll start it here, very thin. So it looked like it dinged off his armor that way, right?
Yeah.
And
cool.
then you can make even smaller little dings where it trailed off to. So it hit there and went up, right?
Right.
It's always good to do it near edges of stuff. That's a good start. So like at the edge of the leg here, maybe you got hit in the back. So you would start down and go down very thin. Right?
Yeah.
And then you can
Cool.
spend a lot of time doing it depending where you want where you got hit, how much damage you want. Like here's another edge. You could put it like there where he got hit. Some people put it by the eyes too, or you can do it at the top of the helmet because they're wearing a helmet already. Maybe something ricocheted off the top of his helmet or something.
Yep.
So, like that. Depending how big, you can make them bigger or not. But I'm not going to put too much battle damage on him. But maybe over there by his feet too, because we did the stippling down there. But the line there is a good place to put it. Right here. Now, if you want to give it more definition just like that, like in the chest. Certain armor, if you're doing dark armor, it's good to do kind of like a lighter iron on it because it will show up more.
Right.
If you do a lighter ding on the armor, you won't see it as much on white.
Yep.
So, depends how you want it to look. I did on, where is he? This guy. I did some of the silver underneath where the dings are on him.
Yep.
You can't notice as much on that, so I'm going to try white. So, the standard white that we use for the highlight.
Yep.
From scale 75. It's kind of trial and error when you try it out. So I'll just run along the edges of where the ding hit. Not in it, but just to make it hit. So it grazed the armor and raised it a bit so there would be white showing.
Yeah, cool.
So, where's another one that we did? Down by the leg down here.
Yep.
There's a skinny one. So I would put right beside it. It's good if you have a really skinny brush. Just where the armor hit. So it dinged there and it raised the armor up a bit. So then it got a highlight there, right?
Right.
Down here. And depending how crazy you want to go with the battle damage, you can put it all over them and do the same effect all the way all over, right?
Right.
If you want even more to it, so where that raised white was, you can go back and do a really shiny silver.
Yep.
This helps if you have a small brush or have better control that your hands don't shake. So that shiny silver, just where that white hit, now you're going to highlight where that silver was, where the white went. So now you have 3 little definitions there where the armor hit.
Yeah, cool.
Same with up in the helmet too. Put a little ding there. Where the pauldron, we remember we got hit there, right? So we'll make it look like it chipped into it. What's the silver there?
Cool.
Same with some silver over here too. Where those went? Just subtle. Like that. So now the pauldron has a bit of damage, so it looked like the bullet hit his chest and went up the pauldron a bit, right?
Yeah.
Same was back there, it went down a bit.
Cool.
And you can go, depending how crazy, that was a stippling.
Yeah.
And I'm going to base mine with sand. So this guy has a little tuff on there, so depending however tufts you want to use, there's lots of different, multiple ones. I've seen some cool purple ones people use.
Yep.
But you can use, those are the tufts I grew on.
Blue and pink ones.
I don't put them on all of them, maybe a couple. And then I've had this sand forever, but you can even go down to the beach and get sand. Wherever you want to use sand for it.
Yeah.
It all works, but that's just, and I mix sometimes if I have little like dead grass, I would mix it in there.
Yep.
And I'm going to put that around the base. I don't know if I'll put a tuff on this guy, and then I'll base them, and once they're all done, I'll show what mine and Raven look like together.
Awesome.
So we finished up our models. I got my Stormtrooper unit leader there.
Yeah,
done.
That's awesome.
You see the battle damage we did on it and the sand on the base.
Yep.
And for him, I did Vallejo gloss varnish on it. Gave him that little gloss too. Turn him around.
Very cool.
Back. And then Raven finished up Leia
Yep.
too. And then we used matte clear on it.
Yep.
And then I was going to show you, I finished up the other Stormtroopers, some of them, and some of the coating, the differences of it. So that satin clear from Rust-Oleum I got from hardware store. It's not as shiny as a gloss, but gives it a little bit of sheen too.
Yep.
And then these ones are semi-gloss. On these ones, I believe, let's see. Yeah, semi-gloss. So there's a little bit of gloss to them.
Very cool.
Wanted them to all have a little bit of different sheen to them, right? So they're not all same.
Yep.
And then that guy is pearl. I like the look of the pearl. It gives it a little bit of sheen and not sheen, depending how you look on it.
Yeah, I like the pearl too.
Yeah.
Gives the white a little bit
Cameo
of an
color
extra,
pearl.
extra something.
And that's everybody. That's some out. That's everybody. We also just got the other core box that we'll be building up too.
Yep.
And I got Boba Fett too. So we'll have a lot of them to hopefully have up to. I don't know if we'll do painted videos, but playing them in games soon too.
Absolutely.
And we'll take some pictures and put them at the end of the video so you can see how they look on the table too.
Yeah. So if there's a Legion that somebody in Star Wars Legion that you've been playing that you think is particularly cool, please let us know. We're new to the game.
Yeah.
We're always excited to hear what other people are saying. Yeah.
So we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.